What happens when the world's largest retailer declares war on the White House? When an economic superstorm rips through grocery aisles and kitchen tables from Ohio to Osaka? It wasn't a foreign invasion, a financial crash, or even a pandemic. It was a penstroke in the Rose Garden. Trump's executive order 14,257 that ignited a chain reaction no one saw coming. 50,000 jobs on the line, beef prices soaring, global trade routes in chaos. While the media focused on Washington politics, America's economic backbone, Walmart, was cracking. From rising lettuce costs to shuttered warehouses, the true toll was far more personal than pundits realized. This isn't just about numbers, this is about families, about your next grocery bill, about the moment Walmart told President Trump, "No, stay with us." Because what you're about to hear isn't theory, it's the unraveling of modern retail as we knew it. Make sure to subscribe. This is the economic truth they don't want you to hear. Begin full rewritten, expanded narrative. Not long ago, President Trump delivered a sharp public message to Walmart, demanding that the retail behemoth eat the cost of his newly enforced tariffs. But behind closed doors, the message landed like a sledgehammer. Walmart, the titan of low consumer goods, was already planning major cuts. 1,500 jobs gone, as part of a deep restructuring campaign meant to reduce overhead and streamline operations. The Wall Street Journal confirmed that the retailer was reworking its entire internal structure, especially in global technology. But the warning signs went far beyond spreadsheets and boardrooms. Walmart's Q1 profits had dipped noticeably, and their once ironclad everyday low prices promise was unraveling. With costs surging due to mounting tariffs, they were left with two choices: absorb billions in losses or pass the pain to consumers. They chose the latter, and the consequences were immediate. It started with beef. A 500G tray that once sold for $9 now rang up at $13.89. Shoppers gasped. Lettuce saw a 30% hike. Basic cereal, up $2. The psychological security of stable food pricing, an American norm for decades, was shattered. And as shelves buckled under inflationary pressure, Walmart shocked the nation with a bombshell announcement. 10 major distribution centers would be temporarily shut down. 50,000 jobs vanished overnight. Families scrambling to pay rent now faced empty schedules, lost benefits, and little warning. Trump's tariffs, once framed as economic weapons against foreign manipulation, had detonated deep within America's domestic heart. In rural Ohio, in southern Texas, in central Florida, Walmart workers felt the sting. Yet this was only the beginning. Across the ocean, panic flared. African and Asian nations that relied on Walmart's logistics network for affordable food began reporting shortages. Canned goods vanished. Cooking oil doubled in price. Supermarkets in Southeast Asia reported rice imports from the U.S. simply stopped arriving. Meanwhile, Trump doubled down, chastising Walmart in speeches and media interviews, accusing the corporation of betraying American workers by shifting parts of its supply chain offshore. But from inside Walmart's headquarters, executives saw no other path. Faced with an impossible business equation, they had begun quietly moving operations to Vietnam and India, even striking urgent sourcing contracts with Cambodia. It was a desperate pivot to stay afloat, and one that would destabilize global trade for months. Then came the next hammer blow. On April 2, 2025, under a blazing Rose Garden sun, Trump signed Executive Order 14,257, known unofficially as the Liberation Day tariffs. Every major import entering the U.S. except those from Canada and Mexico was slapped with a 10% base tariff. But that was just the appetizer. 4 days later, retaliatory tariffs hit 60 countries. China, predictably, suffered the worst. A jaw-dropping 145% tariff on nearly all exports. Walmart's supply chain trembled. Their longtime toy supplier, Hunter Toy Factory in Guangdong, saw 70% of its orders evaporate in less than 2 weeks. And when the American Toy Association issued a dire bankruptcy warning, it confirmed what insiders already feared: this wasn't just a retail crisis. This was a collapse in slow motion. By mid-April, chaos infected the ports of Long Beach, Los Angeles, and Savannah. Containers filled with Walmart-bound goods were simply abandoned. Importers, crushed by the new tariffs, chose to walk away rather than pay. Customs brokers were stunned. Never had they seen cargo rotting by the ton, left on docks with no one to claim it. Refrigerated containers full of beef, fruit, and dairy expired as trucking routes were canceled. The dominoes continued to fall. Walmart's truck drivers reported reduced loads and fewer delivery routes. In some regions, their delivery schedules dropped by 40%, prompting warehouse layoffs and split shifts. The company's legendary logistics system, a model praised by MBS and Fortune 500s alike, was crumbling under geopolitical pressure. In Washington, officials insisted these were short-term pains for long-term gains. But for the workers of Walmart, Target, and Home Depot, Those short-term pains came in the form of eviction notices and bank overdraft fees. On April 29th, Walmart disclosed a projected $25 billion loss for Q2. It was staggering. Entire towns felt the shock. Restaurants near shuttered distribution hubs saw customer counts fall off a cliff. Gas stations posted declining sales. School boards warned of dropping tax revenues, forcing budget cuts. The economic quake radiated outward from Walmart like aftershocks from a tectonic blast. Asterisk then, on May 2nd, Trump upped the ante once more. In a televised statement, he warned of a 50% tariff on all European imports unless the EU conceded to U.S. demands. Ursula von der Leyen, president of the European Commission, managed to negotiate a temporary delay, but the threat remained. Markets bled red, Germany's car exports halted, and the Euro Stoxx 600 plummeted. Meanwhile, South Korea, caught in the crossfire, suffered its own crisis as Trump imposed a 25% tariff on imported vehicles. Hyundai and Kia lost nearly half their US-bound shipments. South Korea's central bank issued a grave warning: Q3 exports could shrink by 4%, triggering job losses in industrial cities like Ulsan and Gwangju. Asterisk meanwhile, at Walmart, the internal documents began leaking. One memo, Project Triage, outlined a brutal roadmap: close down 10 major distribution centers over the next 6 weeks. Communities that once depended on these massive hubs for employment, commerce, and economic life were left devastated. Brooksville, Florida; Elwood, Illinois; Groveport, Ohio; Sanger, Texas. Each of these locations operated vast round fulfillment networks feeding America's insatiable demand for consumer goods. Now they were silent. Empty, laid-off workers scrambled for unemployment benefits, while local diners and truck stops reported revenue losses of up to 60%. It was retail Armageddon. It was only May. In parallel, shipping chaos surged. Freight rates on the Shenzhen-Long Beach route more than doubled in 3 weeks. What cost $3,500 per container now costs $6,500, and some analysts warned it could spike to $8,500 before summer's end. Walmart's Asian suppliers, textile mills in Hanoi, electronics factories in Tamil Nadu simply couldn't fill China's shoes. They didn't have the infrastructure or volume. Even worse, many components still came from China, meaning alternative supply chains were nothing more than pipe dreams. Asterisk, as a result, delays became rampant. Walmart executives quietly admitted that entire store aisles were being left unstocked. Grocery shelves went unfilled for days. TikTok exploded with hashtags like #EmptyAisles and #WalmartCrisis, racking up 20 million views. Viral videos showed families walking down desolate dairy sections or filming price tags that had doubled overnight. On Twitter, Trump fired back, accusing Walmart of sabotaging America. But the damage was already done. The public had chosen a different villain, and it wasn't a multinational retailer. And then, on May 28th, a U.S. court intervened. The Court of International Trade temporarily paused several of Trump's tariff provisions, citing violations of EPA regulatory overreach. But instead of clarity, the ruling birthed confusion. Would tariffs snap back within weeks? Would they rise even higher? Walmart, reeling from weekly changes to freight rates and supplier costs, was thrown into further disarray. Small importers began missing payroll, mid-sized suppliers filed for bankruptcy, and a chilling new question hovered over every meeting at Walmart HQ: what if this isn't the worst of it? Walmart's executives weren't just worried about the next quarter, they were panicking about survival. With supply chains paralyzed, container ships anchored offshore, and warehouse doors shuttered, the future of American retail stood on the edge of a cliff for decades. Walmart had engineered one of the most intricate logistical networks in the world: 150 distribution centers, 11,000 stores, and over 200 million weekly customers worldwide. That system now stood vulnerable to the unpredictable waves of geopolitics. And while policymakers in Washington debated strategy, millions of Americans faced immediate consequences. School lunches vanished. Elderly customers on fixed incomes skipped medications to afford milk. Tariffs weren't abstract, they were dinner table decisions. For truck drivers, the chaos was devastating. Local carriers that had relied on Walmart's steady stream of routes lost contracts overnight. Truck stops that once buzzed with commerce became ghost towns. Equipment leases were canceled. Diesel orders delayed. Empty trailers became a symbol of America's new normal: movement without purpose. Asterisk, then came the freight crisis. Walmart's pivot away from China triggered a frenzied demand for alternative shipping lanes. India, Vietnam, Cambodia were flooded with U.S. orders. But those countries weren't prepared. Ports choked with backlog. Textile mills in Hanoi announced 6-month delays. Electronics plants in Chennai ran short of critical Chinese components. And Walmart's attempt to build a non-China supply chain crumbled under its own weight. The just-in-time model had become a ticking time bomb. Shipping carriers raised rates. Blank sailings jumped 20%, ships intentionally skipping ports to avoid congestion and tariffs. Walmart's shipments often arrived 2 weeks late. In stores, this meant product outages and angry customers. For the first time in decades, Walmart could not guarantee price or availability. Customers noticed and rivals moved in. Amazon slashed prices on essential goods through Whole Foods, targeting Walmart's grocery dominance. Aldi and Dollar General rapidly expanded fresh food sections, soaking up defecting shoppers. Internally, Walmart launched Project Reset, a crisis-level overhaul of the company's entire sourcing and fulfillment network. The first step, a massive investment in Vietnam and India, over $1.2 billion to ramp up textile and home goods production. But the move came with political risks. The White House accused Vietnam of currency manipulation and hinted at anti-dumping tariffs as high as 46%. Walmart's international sourcing team scrambled. To hedge risk, they launched the Heartland Manufacturing Initiative, $5 billion investment in new domestic factories in Arkansas, Ohio, and South Carolina, funded by a special bond sale while interest rates briefly dipped. The plan slashed overseas shipping times from 28 days to under 1 week. But even with that commitment, the question loomed. Could America's hollowed-out manufacturing sector really support Walmart's enormous demand? While blueprints were being drafted, the pain on the ground intensified. In Brooksville, to one of the now-closed distribution hubs, school districts slashed budgets in anticipation of lost tax revenue. Local diners posted now hiring signs that went unanswered. Trucking firms pulled back on equipment orders. Farmers who had once relied on Walmart for international beef exports now watched tons of meat rot in cold storage. In April alone, American beef shipments to Asia dropped 42%, and the ripple effects kept growing. The Small Business Confidence Index fell to 95.8 in April, below its 51-year average, as retailers feared locking in contracts that could become unprofitable within days. Across the industry, credit ratings for logistics, storage, and retail companies were downgraded. The fear wasn't just inflation, it was structural collapse. As Walmart hemorrhaged, the chain reaction reached unexpected places. Bonded warehouse space became scarce. Firms raced to hoard goods before the next tariff wave. Rents quadrupled. Even flexible storage startups like Flex reported six-fold surges in inquiries. Some warehouse operators began charging waitlists for the first time in company history, and then came the human toll. Small suppliers, unable to keep up with tariff costs, began cutting insurance coverage, delaying payroll, and begging banks for loan extensions. Trucking companies furloughed drivers, storage companies turned away customers. At every link in Walmart's chain, the stress fractured systems once considered unshakable. The courts, meanwhile, had only paused the tariffs, not killed them. As the June 30th restart deadline loomed, investors braced for a storm. Walmart CFO, John David Rainey, made a chilling appearance on CNBC. He painted a grim portrait. Patio sets from Guangdong now cost $60 more. Child car seats from Suzhou spiked from $350 to $450. And beef, once a low-cost American staple, now cost $14 a pound. Even Walmart's own marketplace, its third-party seller platform built to compete with Amazon, was collapsing. Small businesses that imported cookware, apparel, or toys found themselves crushed. Many raised prices, others disappeared entirely. The dream of a fast-shipping, low-cost rival to Amazon was dying on the vine, and with it, Walmart's digital hopes for the future. As summer approached, so did a deeper panic. On June 5th, Walmart confirmed it would begin layoffs at key fulfillment hubs by June 30th. Over 50,000 workers, mostly temporary or agency labor, would lose their paychecks. In Washington, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle demanded hearings. The House Commerce Committee announced an investigation into whether Trump's tariffs had backfired. But for families already losing homes and skipping meals, it was too little, too late. And while Trump insisted the tariffs were necessary to restore American manufacturing, the numbers painted a different story. Factory output remained flat, job gains were minimal, and the cost of everyday items, groceries, clothes, electronics, kept rising. In cities like Riverside, California, and Pageland, South Carolina, the economic devastation was visible. Schools, gas stations, diners, even local mechanics all reported fewer customers and lower sales. The beating heart of Walmart's retail empire had stopped. Then came the memo that changed everything. Leaked from a senior VP, a document titled Project Triage, Phase 2 landed in the hands of Bloomberg reporters. It revealed Walmart's worst fears. They expected supply chain instability until at least Q3 2026. The memo warned of new shutdowns, further layoffs, and potential store closures in underperforming regions. Investors panicked. Walmart stock dipped 17% in 2 days. Credit agencies flagged its bond outlook. On TikTok, viral videos under hashtag Walmart collapse topped 50 million views. Young shoppers filmed half-empty aisles and rising prices, blaming Trump, and tagging him in posts. Twitter erupted with debates. Some blamed Walmart, others blamed the government, but families just wanted groceries they could afford. Behind the drama, Walmart tried to fight back. The company accelerated its $350 billion domestic investment plan, pledging new factories, jobs, and innovations over the next decade. But even that couldn't erase the trauma. In Guangdong, Hunter Toy Factory laid off 130 workers in 3 weeks. After 40 years of partnership with Walmart, the factory faced bankruptcy. In the U.S., Everbright Sewing in Brooksville shut its doors after 20,000 uniform orders were canceled. Its owner delivered a tearful interview. "One phone call from Walmart ended our business." These weren't isolated tragedies, they were echoes of a broken system. All across America, suppliers, truckers, warehouse crews, and small towns collapsed under pressure they didn't create and couldn't control. The political fallout was just beginning. In July, House Republicans split over whether Trump's tariff strategy had gone too far. Meanwhile, Senate Democrats demanded emergency economic aid for affected workers. And quietly, Walmart lobbyists pushed for fast-track trade deals with India, Vietnam, and the EU to stabilize sourcing. But these fixes would take years far too late for the 50,000 workers whose jobs were gone. In interviews across closed distribution hubs, families expressed despair. A truck driver in Groveport, Ohio said, "I voted for Trump. I believed in Made in America. But now I'm delivering nothing and wondering how to pay rent." As the crisis deepened, Walmart's leadership faced the impossible. They needed to maintain shareholder confidence, restore consumer trust, and rebuild a global supply chain, all while hemorrhaging cash. Their once unstoppable logistics machine now burned millions each day, storing unsold inventory. Cold storage overflowed, shelves sat empty. Amazon, Aldi, and smaller rivals gleefully expanded into Walmart's abandoned territory. And every day, more families ask the same question: if Walmart can't survive this, what does that mean for the rest of us?